Good evening, everyone out there in Train World. My name's Jim Wiggin, and I'm your host for Train Tuesday. And I hope you guys remember to set those clocks forward. So you're getting a little bit more daylight now. So if you can keep away from the temptation of working on the yard or outdoor things, still time to work on some trains and some layout stuff. Let's see who's joining us here tonight. We have Idaho Railfan, DG Model Works, Ted Ferguson, Steve, Ibuprofen Dave. I could use some ibuprofen right now. How about Rick, Chicagoland Railfan, Abel, Thomas, Dave, BNSF N Scale, Terry, George. Hey, we're going to have a great show tonight. We're going to talk freight cars, nothing but freight cars. All you guys that are modeling the 1990s, heads up. We've got some stuff for you. For our friends that are modeling in the 1960s into the 70s, we got something for you. And for our friends that are modeling into the 70s, into the early 80s, we've got something for you. So if you think about it, we got something for the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and we can even push into the 2000s a little bit tonight. So we're going to be talking freight cars from both Genesis and ready to roll. So before we get started, let's check out there one more time to see who's joining us tonight. We've got Mr. Terry LaFrance. We've got Frederick, Ben, Tom, Mark, Brian. Dave is happy that we're doing 90s. We got Thomas and David. So everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. And let's do what we always do. Let's get the comfortable position in the workshop chair. We'll put down the hobby knife. We'll grab the beverage of our choice. And let's get started with Train Tuesday. So the first things that I'm going to show you here tonight are these Genesis Trinity covered hoppers. Now, these are probably officially one of my favorite freight cars, and if you're modeling the 1990s, they're probably going to be one of yours too, especially if you've got a Granger Road. So let's talk about these for a second. The detail on these cars is phenomenal. All the brake plumbing detail is there. Everything is finely done. In fact, you got to be careful when you take these guys out of your packages or out of the storage things because they are super delicate. But it is so worth it because if you've got a layout, especially at the right height, these cars just present really well. Now, we just had some come into stock a while back. We had some of the new BNSF Trinities. In fact, I showed them briefly on the Athearn Live last month, and they sold out quickly. So if you missed out on that release, you're definitely going to want to take a note of what we've got here. Now, I've mainly got stuff from the 90s here. So if you've been a fan of the 90s, well, stay tuned to this. So the first one we've got here is the Dakota, Minnesota, and Eastern. This is a 1996 model. And believe it or not, DM&E hauled nearly 60,000 carloads of freight in the fiscal year 2002 alone. Now, out of that, they were serving about 130 customers. And of these shipments, 53% was grain. So it makes sense for them to have their own covered hoppers. Now, if you lived anywhere in the north part of the Midwest, you probably saw these. In fact, you probably will still see them occasionally because, like I said, this is a 1996 model, and they continued throughout. Even though the DM&E is technically long gone, these freight cars still remain. So coming up next, we have the ConAgra. This one is indicative of a car of 2000, but you can use it 2000 plus. Pretty much around 2005, 2006, before they used the high-vis stripes. I can't say that other word, so I'm not going to embarrass myself. But ConAgra was founded in 1919 by Frank Little and Alva Kinney, who brought together 4 grain mills at a Nebraska Consolidated Mills at Grand Island, Nebraska. Small start, but if you know anything about ConAgra now, they're a huge company. And of course, one of the things that they work heavily in is soy. And so it's not unusual for a company such as ConAgra to have a fleet of these cars. Now, one of the things I wanted to mention too is that all of these cars that we're introducing, they're going to come in singles, and they're also going to come in multi-packs. The multi-packs include 3 cars, all with individual numbers. So you're going to have, looking at the ConAgra that we've got here, looking at the DM&E, you've got 2 singles, and then you've got 2 multi-packs, and those 2 multi-packs include 3 cars with individual numbers that are separate from the rest. So technically there's, well, you've got 6, 7, 8 cars, all different. And since we're talking the 90s and early 2000s, there's probably going to be a lot of cars in here that you could add to your collection and make a relatively small freight grain train pretty quickly, pretty easily. So this is one, and again, if you've lived in the Midwest and even outside of the Midwest, I'm sure you've seen these. These are the AGP. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually, let's go to the AGP first, and then we'll talk about the Prime for Grime. So AG Processing, this car right here, as it appears, 1996. That kind of a cool jade green color that they painted them. I remember seeing these all over central Illinois back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And these were made basically for their soybean processing plants. They have about 10 of them throughout the Midwest. And they're used for both soybean meal and crude soybean oil. So these cars work in conjunction with those plants transporting soy. Now, going back to the Prime for Grime, so the first one here is Joseph Transportations. Now this one, 2 things to look at. This is later 2000s, so you're talking 2005, 2006. You've got your high-vis markings here that are visible at nighttime. That was something that came standard around 2005, 2006. And this one is lighter. You can see it's kind of faded out, and I do remember seeing these guys fade out pretty quickly to almost like a funny sky blue to almost a light teal, just depended on how much sun bleaching they got over the years. Now the other Prime for Grime that we're doing is the Interstate Commodities. This is late 2000s Prime for Grime. You can see that the original logo, AGP's logo, has been marked out and it's got new reporting marks. And again, this is Prime for Grime. So you guys that are modeling the 1990s, you've been asking for these. And let's face it, you go through any grain elevator from the mid-2000s on, this is pretty much what you're going to see. Trinities are heavily used in modern grain operations, and a lot of them are going on to their second or third owner. So here's one that's really cool, and I had to do a little research on this line. This is as the car appeared in 1996, and it is a regional railroad line that runs from north central Kansas into eastern Colorado. It's based in Phillipsburg, Kansas, and runs on a 561 miles of track. That's mostly the former Rock Island, which is kind of cool. Kyle was owned by Rail America from about 2002 to 2012, and then Genesee and Wyoming took over. So technically still there. If you're a fan of the Kyle railroads, it's probably not the same if it's, you know, the Genesee and Wyoming colors that they apply to all their locomotives. But the other thing that kind of a lot of rail fans strongly dislike about Genesee and Wyoming is their, dare I say, Borg approach to railroading. Before they came on the scene, Kyle had a rather interesting roster, and I've got some trivia for you, and I'm going to see who can get the answer first. Let me switch screens here so I can watch you guys. But one of the most interesting pieces of motive power they had was a former Burlington Northern unit, which was actually a former Spokane, Portland, and Seattle locomotive. Anybody out there can tell me what locomotive it was? And I'm looking at the comments. So think about it for a second. former Burlington Northern, former Spokane, Portland, and Seattle, not EMD. Something really, and I'm looking to see my regular guys. Let's see, Steve, you're close. So I think we've got a winner here. Elko C425. That's pretty, that's pretty cool. I mean, it's another one of those railroads I wish I could have rail fanned if I had had the opportunity. They also had a lot of former Burlington Northern General Electric locomotives. Once Genesee and Wyoming, came up to take over, they all went EMD, ST40-2s, if my memory serves me correctly. I could be wrong. So you're modeling the 1990s, 1996 for this one, Kyle, and it's a cool little railroad. So this one here is the General American Marks Company. This is 1996 as well. You can model it up to about 2000s, 2005 or so, as delivered. Pretty plain looking car, but again, by this era in rail transport, pretty much standard colors were your grays, your browns, your blacks, things of that nature. There wasn't a lot of money spent on flashy paint schemes by this point. So the General American Marks Company, it's a part of GATX, and it was formerly General American Transportation Company. And cool thing, they have their headquarters just north of us in Chicago. And they own businesses that lease rail cars, locomotives, and believe it or not, aircraft. So definitely a company that's got a lot of fingers in the transportation industry. Now here is what we've got for you Norfolk Southern fans. You guys have been asking for these. So this one here that we've got, this is the later version. This is the Norfolk Southern 2004 on up. You're going to have more markings on it. You're going to have your high-vis markings. And then we're also offering as delivered, but in a 3-pack. So these are as they were in 1997, fresh from Trinity. And you can kind of see some of the little differences here going back and forth. Very subtle. But again, if you're modeling after 2005, they're not so subtle differences, mainly because of FRA mandates. So just to refresh, everything that I showed you, with the exception of the Norfolk Southern cars, they're available in 2 singles, 2 packs of 3. So you have the opportunity to make a really nice grain train. The Norfolk Southern late that I'm showing you, the one from 2004 on up, those are available as 2 singles. If you want to get the as delivered, the 1997, that comes in 2 packs of 3. So like I said, if you haven't seen one of these, you owe it to yourself to talk to your dealer, because there might be some still left over from the shipment that came in about a month ago. We did a run of ADM. We did some BNSF Circle Cross. We did some BNSF Swoosh, the 2005 Onward paint scheme. And they've been extremely good sellers because they are so accurate. They've got separate brake cylinder, valve, air reservoir. All the brake plumbing is there. The photo etched metal roof walks is one of my favorite things. If you're used to some of the older covered hoppers, a lot of manufacturers would do those in plastic. And I mean, they look okay. But when you have metal etched doing all that walkway material and the grab irons and things of that nature, it just looks that much better. So before we go on to the next one, I'm going to see if anybody has any questions on the Trinities or any comments on those. Isaac, I'm sure you're going to be happy about these. I think those are right in your era. Let's see, what other comments are we having? Yes, they have, Kyle. Yeah, they have. Norfolk Southern is a strong railroad. We get a lot of requests for that. UP is very popular, of course, and so is Norfolk Southern. So we're happy to provide those to you guys. Randall's a fan. Yeah, I think currently right now of all the Genesis models, these are my favorite. Tyler's on board. Yeah. Now, remember, everything that I'm showing you, you have until next Friday, believe it or not, next Friday, to place your pre-orders. And if you missed out on the ones that just got delivered last couple of weeks ago, you're definitely going to want to pre-order these. We all know that DG Model Works likes Norfolk Southern, so yeah, definitely. David's got a comment on Kyle. He says they have a couple of ST40T-2s. That's kind of cool. They probably didn't escape the Genesee and Wyoming paint scheme, though. I'm thinking they probably found those from another road and put them in their corporate. Yeah, Terry's saying, yeah, they had a bunch of SP tunnel motors. Yeah, that's cool. Let's see, any other comments? Michael's got a comment. He's saying each one of these is road number specific and not being mass produced. So if you're talking about the Trinity hoppers, for the most part, these are as delivered. As far as details, they pretty much stay within their order. Prime for Grime's a little bit different, but we're offering the AGP already. So it's basically just a Prime for Grime version of the AGP with new reporting marks. But yeah, they're all going to have their own unique numbers. So you don't have to re-decal them or anything like that. If you want to get more than that, and you're certainly welcome to do that. But yeah, since it is Genesis, yeah, they're going to be pretty much all different. All right, so what do we have next? Okay, we got, so that, that's pretty much everything that we're talking about in 1990s to early 2000s. For everybody that's modeling the 1970s, specifically 78, 79, I've got something here for you. And we're going to go back to the per diem. We've talked a little bit about it on the program. Real briefly, and again, I can't do it justice from memory alone. You can see a pretty good exhaustive example on Wikipedia. But the per diem was a way for short lines to get boxcars. And that's why in 78, 79, and onward, during this per diem phase, it was kind of the last real boost of the boxcars, and especially brightly painted boxcars. And some of us remember that a little bit more vaguely than others, but we do remember that. And it was kind of neat to see these short lines that, frankly, you may have never even heard of. This was long before the internet, so rail fanning was a little bit different back then. Now, one that did take advantage of the per diem was the Rock Island. Here we've got 3 different road numbers for the Rock Island. And of course, this is in their, what was then their new and would turn out to be their final paint scheme. Rail fans jokingly called it the bankruptcy blue. But it's actually seen a lot of fan favoritism in the last few years. And so we're offering this one. This is a 1979 model. We're offering this in 3 road numbers. Here we've got the North Louisiana and Gulf, kind of a cool railroad. It's a subsidiary of the Hugh Hodge Lumber Company, and acquired later on by Kansas City Southern, but the name still survives as a leased asset. This is I believe I've got 78 in my notes. Yeah, 1978. We're offering it in 3 different road numbers. And the thing that's great about these are ready to roll. If you're modeling the late 70s into the early to mid 1980s, these are perfect for your layout. Here's Sandersville. Originally operated from, forgive me, folks of the South, Tennille, that's how you say it, Georgia, to Sandersville, Georgia, and it was chartered in 1839. And the company has its main office, dispatchers, locomotive, and railcar maintenance shops, maintenance away equipment shed, and the locomotive fuel towers and sanding tower all are located in historic downtown Sandersville, Georgia. So it sounds like I need to go down there and do some rail fanning. Again, this is going to be what these boxcars look like in 1979, and we're offering them at 3 different road numbers. Here's the South Branch Valley Railroad. Really neat little railroad. You can do a quick search on this. A lot of different information on this railroad. It's owned and operated by West Virginia State Rail Authority. And since it was sold by the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in October of 1978. And I think, and you guys out there watching, you can substantiate or correct me, but I think I saw some pictures of one of their locomotives. It looked like a Jeep 7 or a Jeep 9, still in chassis paint. Now, I don't know how recent that picture was. Just kind of doing some quick prep for the show, and I saw that. And I've always been a fan of the chassis, so it's like, okay, this could be a fun little short line to model. If you're not familiar with it, just do a quick search, South Branch Valley, and it's a really interesting railroad. I've got a lot of details here. We won't go into them tonight, but maybe in a future broadcast we can. Texas Mexican Railway. Now this car is definitely colorful, and I really like that logo that they're using, and apparently it is still used. There's a railroad that was operated as a subsidiary of Kansas City Southern Railway in Texas. It's often referred to as the Tex-Mex or the Tex-Mex Railway. January 1st, 2005, Kansas City Southern took control of the Texas Mexican Railway and the U.S. portion of the Texas Mexican Railway International Bridge in Laredo, Texas. Pretty cool. The railroad is a vital link in KCS's rail network, connecting KCS and TFM. While Tex-Mex remains a separate legal entity, Kansas City Southern and Tex-Mex are operated as one railroad. So it's one of those railroads that's still around pretty much just in paper alone. But in 1979, when these cars were introduced to the railroad, they were still considered the Tex-Mex. 3 different road names in this one as well. Cool car. And last but not least, we've got the Winchester and Western. It's a short line railroad operating from Gore through Winchester, Virginia, and West Virginia to Hagerstown, Maryland. It also operates several lines in southern New Jersey, connecting to Conrail Shared Assets operations in Millville and Vinland. So that's some cool information. Still around. These cars appeared like this in 1978. These were brand new on their property. And we're also doing that in 3 different road numbers. So I don't know about you guys. I'm going to go back and look at your comments. So I don't know about you guys, but this has always been an interesting period of modeling for me, whether it be Boston and Maine or some of the Midwest railroads. Really cool era And you were still seeing a lot of Class 1s still kind of, making it by, but kind of acting like a short line or a branch line. Certainly the Rock Island comes to mind. You would have main lines that were not the best condition, but you would have new freight cars with brand new, shiny, painted cars. And it was kind of a interesting time in our railroading history. So if you model the 1970s and 1980s, these are a must-have, especially if you're into operations, if you're into the small switching layouts, or if you're part of a modular club. These are great to put a line of these together, maybe run it with a Jeep 7, Jeep 9, or the new GP18s that we came out with a couple of years ago. And just some really neat, colorful cars, something that you don't really see much anymore. Let's go ahead and take a look at some comments before we go on to the next car. And I'll go back a little bit. Let's see. A lot of thumbs up here, and yep, that is correct. I did mention that. And sometimes too, I don't always see your comments because I'm going between the two screens. So Terry is a wealth of information. I don't always see it until later. Paul's got a good comment. He's like, hey, how about a run of these Boxcars X-Rock as CNW repaints? We'll probably do that in the future. You can do it very easily. Microscale used to make a decal set that would allow you to take Rock Island cars and put CNW reporting marks on them, complete with the little, stencil that went over the original reporting marks. Makes for a really interesting freight car. So you can always check out Microscale Industries. They make a lot of decals for HO, N-scale, and other scales. And check and see if that's still available. It's been a number of years since I've seen that specific decal set, and I'm sure we'll probably do something like that in the future. Let's see what else we've got. Tom's got some interesting information. He says the SBVR colors started out on a model railroad and adapted to the prototype. That's pretty cool. I've not heard that. Yeah, they were. They were definitely cool. Let's see. What else do we got? Yeah. Ibuprofen Dave's got some more to add to that. He says, if I'm not mistaken, Tony Keister convinced them to paint them this way. Ah, okay. Well, if somebody was going to convince somebody to paint their equipment, that's a pretty good reason to do it. That's pretty cool. And that would make sense too. That's kind of his neck of the woods. Let's see, what else have we got? Somebody's happy. Kevin's happy about the Winchester and Western. Awesome. Late night model railroad. Atherton is feeding my train addiction too much lately. We'll definitely be getting some of what I've seen so far. Yeah, I got to check on your YouTube channel. I haven't done that in a while. If you haven't seen Late Night Model Railroad, go over to his YouTube channel. He's a very talented, great woodworker and great ideas with making really nice presentation style layouts. So go ahead and check him out. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. It was the last hurrah of cool railroading. Yeah. Yeah, and depending on what era you're modeling, they will need lots of weathering. The kind of the sad thing is, and This is why we see freight cars in the muted tones that we see now. They look great when they were first delivered, and they're bright reds and yellows and whites and blues and whatever colors they came up with. They look great in the beginning, but it's not like these things go through a car wash like our cars and trucks that we own. They just kept getting used from place to place to place and left out in all kinds of weather, and it didn't take long before those bright colors turned into muted colors and faded out colors, and it's kind of a maintenance thing. And whenever you got to repaint something, you want something really simple. You don't want something too elaborate. Randall says, boy, I'd like to get my hands on some of those cars featured tonight, but I'm fixing to order that BNSF FP45 here in a couple of days, so I better watch my pennies. Well, Randall, I've got great news for you. You can still buy that BNSF FP45. These cars that we're talking about tonight, these are for pre-order. You have until March 25th to order these cars, and they'll come in next March, next April. So you got a year to save up. So don't worry, we got you covered. Yep, I would agree. I do too. I think a lot of us at Athearn kind of enjoy that era. Jason is asking, what's the story with the L&N Jeep 9s? I don't know. I'm not sure what you're asking. They have been in stock. They should be at your dealer. If you pre-ordered one, Jason, you should have gotten a phone call by now. If you didn't pre-order, you can probably find them pretty easily at most dealers. So if you're looking for like a stock on those locomotives, that's your resource. If you got another question about that, I will try to catch it later on in the show. The Rock Island cars rolled longer after the repaint than the original. He's not joking. I've got pictures of a covered hopper in Rock Island paint in 2017. Oh, that's not a wrong statement. Amy's teasing me. Says, check your passport, Northerners. Have watched yourself. Some people might give you a hard time about your accent. Don't ask for a pop. We don't call it that. Well, I know in the Northeast we call it soda, so Midwest calls it pop. But I think you guys in the South call it tonic. Doesn't matter. You guys have great food down there, so, and good sweet tea. Let's see what other comments I've got here. All right. Yeah, it is Tuesday. You guys are making me hungry again with tacos. No Sioux line tonight. I'm with you. Well, I mean, it would be a hard choice. I don't know what. I'd probably have to get the Rock Island. Let's see. What other we? There you go. That's a good idea. It's getting warmer out. Today was nice. Okay, so Jason in reply, he was like, the number boards were messed up. So there was one locomotive that unfortunately we didn't catch it in time. The number font was kind of squished. What we did with those GP9s is there's an addendum in your locomotive, and inside that addendum there is a complete decal sheet to redo those number boards. If for some reason you bought that locomotive and the corrected number board decals are not included, please contact our customer service. They are aware of the situation and they have extra decal sheets and they will get them to you. But we tried to catch, I know myself and my manager personally opened those up and put those decals in there along with the addendum. And so they should be all set. But if for some reason there's no number board decals in there, maybe you misplaced them, you can always call our customer service, and they are aware of it, and they're aware of what locomotive was affected. Just one L&N locomotive was affected, and they'll get you set up. So hopefully, Jason, that'll help you out. All right. Well, there's a lot of great comments out here on those Boxcars. So it looks like it's going to be really popular. And again, we're hearing a lot of people tell us that they really like the model, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. Those are decades that are really hot right now. Not yet. All right. So let's talk about the next item. And this is another item that, you guys get sick of me saying it, but I'm going to say it. It's great for your switching layout. It's great for the club layout. It's great for all around model railroading. And that is these mill gons. These are the 65-foot mill gons. And these were really popular starting in the mid-60s throughout. And up first, we've got the Southern Pacific. Now, pretty much everything I'm showing you is going to be early 1970s. There's a few in here that are 1960s to 1970s. This Southern Pacific car, this is 1970 on up. And we're offering all these mill gons in 2 different road numbers. So the SP is 1970. We're also offering the Santa Fe. That's 1970. Here's a dead giveaway that it's 1970s. We've talked about those before. Briefly, late 70s, there was a run of wheels on freight cars that were determined to be faulty, and so the railroads had to conduct a series of tests and maintenance. And if it had a black square with a white circle, it meant that it could only stay within its own confines. If it had a black background with a yellow circle, it was approved for interchange service. Basically meant it didn't have those wheels that were problematic. That is the short Train Tuesday version of it. Of course, you can catch up on all of that pretty easily on one of your freight car books. But it's another interesting detail that a lot of people may forget, or they may not know what that's there for. So we're offering the Alaska cars. The Alaska cars are popular. This is 1970 as well. I didn't have anything to do with this. I wasn't on this project. I didn't do it, I swear. But interesting thing about the Burlington mill gons, a lot of railroads, they painted their mill gons black or gray or brown. And I just thought it was fascinating that Burlington just threw it out there and painted them Chinese red, a color that they would normally use on their boxcars. And instead, they they used it on their Gonds too, which I thought was really cool. Now, this is a paint scheme that came out in 1957. It was used all the way through 1970 when the Burlington Northern merger was formed. And the fun thing about this is, even if you're a Burlington Northern modeler, if you're modeling the 1970s, you can definitely put one of these in the mix. A lot of these freight cars for all of those railroads that merged to make the Burlington Northern, they didn't paint the freight cars right away. Lehigh Valley. Remember, we did the GP18s not too long ago. So if you pre-ordered the GP18s, you're going to want to pick up a pair of these. These are going to be offered in 2 road numbers. Again, 1970s. These were pretty common on the road, especially in that green. That green color kind of gives it away. And again, if you're a Conrail modeler, I'm sure some maybe got repainted, but it wasn't really a priority. Priority is usually put in other areas, and gondolas is not one of them. And then last but not least, MKT. We had a lot of requests for more MKT equipment, so we're offering some stuff out there for you guys. I know you guys are always very appreciative when we do different models for you. And so here you go. We've got these in 2 different road numbers for you as well. So there you go. And again, you know, these are great for operations. You know, in fact, I was at Springfield, Illinois this past weekend at the train show and met up with a fellow friend and modeler who's doing a lot of scrap and steel mill modeling and N scale. And he showed me how he's doing a special load that on one side the material is a certain size, and when you flip the load over it's a different size, because apparently what he's modeling is some type of corrugated metal goes into a processing plant, it gets cut up, and then they put that material back into the freight car and it gets sent to another part of the plant. And it basically makes for a really interesting operation setup. And so what he made was a 2-piece load, so he could have the load situated in a way that it was going into plant A, if you will. And once it had been processed in plant A, you could switch over the material to its other form and then switch it over to plant B and then empty it and then put it back on the line to be picked up by the railroad. So just goes to show you, these are great for operations with a little bit of ingenuity. They do really well for that. I saw somebody else say something about idler cars. Most definitely, they work well for that. There's all kinds of stuff that you can use these for. See, Terry's, and Terry says, there's a bunch that I'm going to. So, yep. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I've got plenty of pictures of those gondolas in the Burlington route, you know, especially in an era where a lot of them, like I said, were being painted black or oxide colors. Late Night's got a fun, since these gondolas are perfect for carrying your wallet down the tracks to where your computer is so you can start buying more freight cars. I never thought of it that way, but that's a good point. All right. Jim says Conrail. Yes. Lehigh Valley. They survived into the Conrail era. They just didn't get painted right away. Unless you're doing really, you might be doing late Conrail, like late 80s, early 90s, maybe not so much. But if you're doing early Conrail, which is one of my favorite eras, yeah, they definitely have these. All right. So what else have I got for you guys tonight? I think I've got some interesting stuff to show. Let me look at my notes here. Yeah, you know what? We do. So let me go ahead and put this up for you guys to see. Got some friends of Athearn here tonight. And let me show you what's kicking around on the interweb tonight. It's out there on our Facebook and our Instagram. Check this out. This should look familiar. Now, we had offered these for pre-order back in 2020, November of 2020 is when we announced these. This is the GP9s, and of course, we had to do the TH&B. And Justin here did a phenomenal job of weathering his. And when I say phenomenal, I truly mean phenomenal. He weathered up this Genesis TH&B GP9 to match a later in service appearance. If you look carefully, let's zoom in on this guy while I'm talking about it. This is a later appearance. Now, one of the things that stands out, I mean, he's done a great job here of fading out the logo. You can see some stains here. You can definitely see the wear. You can tell it's a maintained locomotive, but man, look at the detail that he's done with that weathering. Nicely done. Chipped paint, worn paint, exhaust fumes. But what sticks out for me is look at the air tanks. So these air tanks, he's painted these CP Action Red, and that's based on the prototype. He did some research. This matches 402's later appearance. So 402 eventually had those tanks repainted in CP Action Red, and it's one of those subtle details. Nicely done. I mean, this he looks like he's got a great layout too, and that is, you can almost smell the diesel fumes. Great job. Really great job. So Justin, thanks for sending that into Athearn. We featured it on our Facebook page, and featured that in our Facebook page and Instagram. And I'm always looking out there. Janik sometimes always looking out there too. So don't be afraid to post our social media and show us what you're working on, because we like to see what's going on out there in the modeling world. And while I'm talking about social media, don't forget, we are on Facebook, Instagram, we're on TikTok now, and we're also on YouTube. Go on over to YouTube, the Athearn YouTube channel, and like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to let you know every time one of these fine videos is uploaded to our channel. All right, now I've got one more thing to show you guys tonight, and then I will let you get back to some model railroading. There's a couple of things that are going to be in stock soon, and one of them is one that I'm excited about. About a year ago, we announced the Genesis Pullman Standard covered hoppers, and we also have the ready-to-roll bathtub hoppers. Let me see if I've got them in the studio. Yes, I do. So there we go. Now, check out the Great Northern. That's the only one that was painted in the big sky blue with the Rocky like that. All the other ones are gray. We had to do that one. And then the O and W. These are going to be in stock in early April, so only a couple of weeks away if you think about it. And again, Genesis covered hoppers, so look at the details. And these are great if you're doing the 1960s, 1970s. You look carefully there, you can see the ACI label right by Rocky. And I know that one's going to be popular. So if you didn't pre-order it, you might have a hard time getting that one. It's the only one we did in that paint scheme. So there you go. Early April, those are going to be in stock at your dealer. If you pre-ordered, you'll be getting a phone call from them. If you did not, you might want to get on the phone and say, hey, I need to get me one of those Pullman Standard covered hoppers, and I also need to get one of those ready to roll bathtub hoppers. And I will probably have more pictures and or video of these cars for you guys to see. Yeah, see, Terry knows it. Yellow dot and ACI labels, 1970s. Yeah, it's as 1970s as polyester and bell bottoms. Maybe a little fog hat too, depending on what your listening style is. Yes, sir, you are correct. So there you got it. Neat stuff. There's always something neat coming out. So definitely want to check those out. Talk to your dealers. And like I said, I was at the Springfield, Illinois train show this past weekend. Had a great time. I met some of you guys. I saw, I think it was Rick. I'm horrible with names, so I apologize if I got your name wrong. But I talked with him for a little bit. I talked with Isaac. I saw a few of you guys out there, and it's always good to put a name to a screen name or a face to a screen name, and had a great time. And, you know, it was just great to be back out in a train show. For me personally, it had been over 2.5 years, and it was great to see all the vendors and all the cool stuff, and just a great time, and found some really interesting stuff to pick up for my own model railroad, and just going and seeing everybody again. So you'll be seeing more train shows, I'm sure, in your area. And while we're talking about train shows, don't forget, I will be with Athearn at the Rocky Mountain Train Show, Denver, Colorado. That's the first weekend of April. It's only a few weeks away. And I'm really looking forward to it. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys out there, get to meet you in person. We can talk trains. We can talk model railroading. We can talk about everything that's fun in model railroading. And then the other thing too is, don't forget, there's some stuff that we're working on behind closed doors. It's big. It's really big. And I won't go too far into it tonight, but keep your eyes posted on all of our social media and any live streams that might pop up on your live feed, because we're getting close to releasing some big news for you guys. All right, I've got time for a couple of questions, and let's see what's going out there. David says, I'll be there. David, we'll stop by the booth. I would be more than happy to see you, talk to you. Cole is saying something that a lot of guys, in fact, I heard this past weekend. Athearn, so maybe in the next run of HO, AC 4400 CWs. How about some Norfolk Southern, UP, BNSF? Yeah, definitely. Those are coming. The great thing about the AC 4400 CW is we've got so many roads to choose from, so many different things to do. If you missed it, go to our YouTube channel, and we've got a special live feed where Jonathan Stackpole, our lead developer and the guy for the AC 4400 CWs, goes into detail about this locomotive. This is our most ambitious project yet, probably. And it's going to be the definitive AC 4400. There's so much research done into this model, and he said that it's like being a kid in a candy store. There's so many different paint schemes to choose. And he's already got, I believe John said, the next 10 runs of road names already picked out. So don't worry. If you're a fan of those railroads, they're coming. Jonathan, here's a cool question. Any chance some delivery trucks and trailers from the 1980s from Canadian furniture stores like Tepperman's, Leon's, and the Brick. Well, my suggestion would be to use our product suggestion email and see. Maybe the guys are working on that already. Maybe they're looking into any legal licensing that has to be, taken care of. But it's a good suggestion. And if it's something that we think there's a need, we'll definitely think about doing it. But use our comment product suggestion email. Looks like a lot of you guys are going to be there in Denver, so that is really cool. Just kind of going through. Isaac wants to know, Shosher Hall. And he got a Genesis CN GP38-2W. Yeah, very cool. I didn't buy any locomotives. I was good. Well, no, I wasn't good because I was able to get my Boston and Maine GP9s and my Canadian Pacific GP9s. But at the show, I got a lot of HO and a lot of N scale. So, and I don't feel guilty. We get a lot of requests for this, the new Hustler. With Tsunami, right? You want Tsunami. I would be one of those little locomotives that if we did it in DCC, it would have to have a keep alive of some type and got to have sound. Let's see, for covered hoppers, any chance of the future releases of NOKL, SMW, RCPE, DSRC, etc. patch cars? Those are great suggestions, by the way, and I would not be surprised if we do something like that in the future. But great comment. And while you're at it, go to Athearn.com, go to the Contact Us page, hit the Athearn product suggestions email, and put those in there. Those are good ideas. I'm going to put Joel up here. This is kind of like a joke that's going back and forth. Sand and circus peanuts. What scale, though? HO, N scale? That always makes me smile. Good question, Terry. More fantasy paints in the AC 4400s than two. Legendary liveries. I don't know. John's got a pretty extensive list of actual prototype stuff. So if we do any, it might be further in the future. It's a good question. That's worth asking. HO Scale Railfan says, best put by a fellow club member. It seems like model train manufacturers are making a lot this year, a lot to get as well. He pre-ordered two of the Lehigh Valley GP18s, and you said you ordered SD90s and SD45-2s. We applaud you. Well, thank you. We appreciate your business. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of new stuff. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the things coming out from not just us, but everybody. It's a great time to be a model railroader. It really is. Good suggestion. The GP39-2s with the tall cab. Now that would require some new tooling. If I'm not misquoting both John and Janik, that would require some new tooling. I don't think we have tooling for that, but I don't know. I'd have to look into that, see if that would be something that could be doable. Oh, okay, that's cool. Just got your California Northern GP15. So excited. You know, the funny thing is, um, it's one of those things when you don't really know about it, you don't really think about it. And if you're not familiar with our GP15s, you need to take a look at DG Model Works. He did a review for us about almost a year now on the GP15s that we announced in 2020, and they were delivered in March or April of 2021. And of course, I was building the switching layout in HO scale, and I wanted a switcher. And so the GP15s came in, and, you know, honestly, I didn't really think about them. It was just like, yeah, it's not really my locomotive. It's not my era. It's not really my thing. I'll just wait till the next 7s or 9s come out and hope I can get a road name I like. And he did a really good review on the Genesis GP15. And, well, it was a good enough review that I went ahead and ordered one. It's actually one of my favorite locomotives now. A little bit of fine tuning, you can set it up with the proto throttle like I have, and it's a lot of fun. It's a nice locomotive for, like I said, the industrial part of your layout, small branch line operations. And, you know, briefly, I mean, that was EMD was seeing a lot of railroads, Illinois Central, Conrail. A lot of class 1s were taking their GP7s, GP9s, and doing a lot of work on them, you know, repowering them, doing all types of work on them. And EMD said, you know, why don't we just offer them a alternative to what's in our catalog that's more in line with what they're doing and make it a little bit more modern. So in the 1970s, EMD introduced the GP15-1, and certainly not in the real world anyway, certainly not as popular as the 7s and 9s and even the 18s, but you can still find them. Conrail was a big purchaser of the GP15s, and a lot of those GP15s went on to find life on other short lines and things of that nature. And yeah, I'm glad you're excited about that. That's a really cool paint scheme. The California Northern GP15s, I missed out on those. I was fortunate enough to get the GMTX, but enjoy that. I think you'll love it. Joel's hoping that someday we'll have working Sanders. Never know. Somebody was asking for Rock Island GP40-2s. They had GP40s, but not -2s. Let's see, what else do we have? I got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Frederick just got his FP45. He's happy. Glad that you're happy with those. Yeah, those are cool. We posted a few of those on Facebook a couple of weeks ago. Here's a valid question. Hey, Jim, do you guys work with other manufacturers so as not to duplicate items? No, we just, honestly, like I was saying earlier, there's so much coming out from all the different manufacturers. So as a consumer, it's a great time to be in the hobby because you've got so many different options. But our developers, while they're aware of what's going on, you know, with other manufacturers and such, they are so busy concentrating on their own projects that it's very rare that there's some product bleed into another manufacturer. And the other thing is if you think about it, for the level of model railroading that we're in now, for this era of model railroading, the old brands that we grew up with and the old blue box, I mean, that just doesn't cut it anymore. So for us to have some of our favorite locomotives done to a ready to roll or Genesis level, the list is just ongoing. And when you think about even something as simple as a GP38-2 on a Genesis level, there's so many different, things that need to be done for a specific railroad. So the possibilities are almost endless. So no, we don't specifically work in conjunction with any other manufacturers. We do all of our research ourselves. And like I said, I was blown away by John's research on the AC 4400s. And like I said, if you haven't seen that, you owe it to yourself to go see that video. But good question. All right, one more question, and then I'm going to let you guys get back to some model railroading. And I thought I saw one here. Jonathan wants to know, hey, Jim, one day, are you going to be visiting Otter Valley Hobbies? Man, I hope so. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to, because Lauren's shop has a lot of things that bring back memories of my earlier days of rail fanning. And, for those of you who don't know, I grew up in New England, and Canada is just another state for us. And for Canada, New England's just another province. Saw a lot of Canadian National, a lot of CP growing up, and that could be a dangerous visit for my wallet. But yeah, maybe someday. I really hope to. All right. Well, it looks like you guys, oh, Paul, I'm going to put your comment out there because I agree. Paul said, I still think John and Tony should team up for an AC 4400 CW book. I would be, yeah, I think that's a great idea. That live feed featured Harry Wong of Railroad Model Craftsman and Tony Cook of HO Collector, as well as Model Railroad News. And we just kind of had a roundtable discussion and just let John show us all the research. And there's so much information. So much information. It would be awesome to see all that in a book. It would definitely be pretty cool. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to let you guys get back to some modeling. So we're going to do it again next Tuesday at 7:00 p.m. Don't forget, you have until March 25th to place your pre-orders on everything that we've talked about, as well as the Genesis AC 4400 CWs. Don't forget, we've got those ready to roll RS3s, and for the first time, they're including LEDs and tsunami sound, as well as a new, more powerful CAN motor. So you're going to want to check those out. And until next time, everybody, I want you to be happy, be healthy, do some modeling, and above all, high greens, everybody. Good night.